see. All right, I believe the recording has now started, and so we will now officially begin today's session. Okay, just to introduce everyone to today's session. Thank you again for those of you who joined us early and for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's event. My name is Vincent. I'm from the NTU Library, and I will be your MC for today. Today's workshop is one of the workshops that the library organizes throughout the year to introduce useful and robust sources of data that we have subscribed to that is useful for teaching, learning, and research. Okay, today's focus will be on one of the databases that has useful materials for research, specifically on primary sources and also on archives. Okay, and specifically, we'll be introducing to you some databases provided by Gale. So before we jump into the actual presentation and the session, some housekeeping. We will have some time at the end of today's session for questions for Q&A. But please type in any questions you have into the chat. Okay, you can type it into me. You can choose me, or you can even share it with everyone publicly if you would like to. But we will answer the questions at the end of the session. Okay, there'll be some time allocated for that. Okay, and for today, our speaker is Mr. Masaki Morisawa, a senior product manager from Gale. And some of the databases he will be introducing today will contain research materials and information that is difficult to access elsewhere. At the same time, he will also be sharing with us some techniques to effectively search in these databases, and also some of the tools that are specific to these databases that should help you to find what you need promptly and effectively. Okay, now without further ado, I will invite Mr. Masaki to take over. Mr. Masaki, please.
Thank you, Vincent. Thank you so much for the kind introduction, and thank you everyone for attending this session despite your busy schedules. I'm Masaki Morisawa from Gale, Asia. I'm actually based in Tokyo, Japan, and I'm very, very happy to be presenting to you today to Nanyang Technological University. So first, let me share my screen. Hold on. So, before I start the session, some of you may have seen in the invitation that Gale is actually sponsoring a quiz session later, not today, but later, with the NTU Library with some very, very nice prizes. So if you're interested in that part especially, please stay until the end because I think Vincent Wong will be announcing a little bit more detail about the quizzes later. It won't happen today, but what I present today will kind of help you get along with the quiz. Okay, so let me start my presentation. So today we'll be talking about researching with primary sources and archives, or more specifically, Gale primary sources, because we publish a lot of this material. So this is today's agenda. I will start out by first of all introducing what are Gale primary sources. So I'll give you a very quick overview, what they are, what kind of products we have, what we do to create them. And then I will go into two demonstrations. So actually NTU has like 40 different products from Gale primary sources alone, which is probably too much for many of you. So I just selected two representative products. I'll start out with a demo of the Times Digital Archive, which is a newspaper product. And then I will demo a bit more, a product that is a bit more complex called China and the Modern World, which is actually a collection of various types of material, mainly manuscript material from the early modern history of China. And then after that, I will give you an overview of all 40 primary source resources that are available to NTU. I won't spend too much time because there's a lot, but I will just highlight some of my favorites and show you what kinds of topics and subjects they can be useful to. And then I will do a demonstration of a cross-search platform where you can cross-search actually most of those 40 collections. And if I have any time at the end, I might this is a might. I might just briefly introduce you to another platform called Gale Digital Scholar Lab, which kind of works on the same material, but offers different functions, namely textual mining functions, if you're interested in that kind of thing. I will be demonstrating the lab because it's far too complex and we don't have enough time to cover that in a single session, but I just want to give you that information as an FYI at the end. Okay, so let's get started. So Gale is a publisher. We publish mainly for the library, and we publish many different things. We publish books, we publish databases, and Gale Primary Sources is a particular line of products that we have been very putting a lot of effort into in the past decades, where we bring historical books, historical newspapers, historical documents, historical letters, and things like those, and make them available online through the internet to academic institutions like NTU. And we have published many such collections. In fact, we have more than 400 separate collections or modules right now. And in total, they comprise more than 200 million pages. I just put some of the names of the main products that we have here as a short list. And in fact, NTU has all of these and more. So what we do when we create Gale primary sources is we visit various institutions in the world that hold this kind of material, historical material. They might be places like the British Library, they might be places like the National Archives of the UK or the US. They might be university libraries or other private libraries that hold rare material. And then we will specify a specific collection that we want to digitize and ask them for permission to digitize their holdings. If we get an yes, we will sometimes go into their rooms and actually digitize their material directly from the original material, like you see here on the screen. Or sometimes we work from a black and white photograph of that material from a kind of an old technology called microfilm. So sometimes the images are scanned directly in full color, sometimes they are in black and white scanned from a black and white photograph. But either case, after we scan all of those pages of these historical documents, books, and newspapers, we apply a special sauce. And we have two kinds of sauces, basically. The first one is the basic sauce, I would say. It's called OCR, optical character recognition. I believe many of you have heard of OCR before. Basically, it's the technology that allows a computer to search words on a printed document. So the OCR technology looks at this printed document and converts each of these printed letters into searchable text. And you can search it using this OCR technology. And for some of our more recent archives that contain handwritten material, this is kind of limited to our more recent archives because this is a fairly new development at Gale. We have also applied a different but very similar type of technology, in fact, a more advanced technology called handwritten text recognition. And this allows us to do the same thing, except with even cursive, say 19th century handwriting like you see here. So for archives that have both of these technologies, I can do a search on a phrase like Canton trade, and I will find it in the middle of a document, highlighted in green. If it's a printed document like this or a typewritten document, the OCR technology kicks in. If it's a handwritten document, for some of our archives, you will even see the handwritten words in cursive handwriting highlighted within the text. And this has been a very amazing technology for lots of researchers because they can do any kind of search and they don't even have to know which title they are searching or what the subject of the book or collection is. The technology will just zoom into that page and bring them to the particular mention of that word. And this has been a game changer for lots of researchers. So all of our products have OCR, optical character recognition, applied, and some of the more recent ones even have handwritten text recognition applied. Okay. And we have many, many such products. And this slide only gives you the products that are available to NTU, which is a lot. There are 40 different modules, and each of these modules sometimes, each of these products sometimes contain multiple modules. For instance, China in the modern world has 6 different parts to it. So it will be impossible to explain all of this within this time. And if I tried, you'll be bored to death anyway. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I'll be focusing on 2 different products. So first of all, you have a lot of newspapers and periodicals, many different types. All of them are actually very, very fun to look at. But today I will focus on the Times Digital Archive. This is the one that probably has the biggest range and it has the broadest application. Anyone can search the Times Digital Archive and find something interesting to them. It's a very, very big archive in that sense. So I'll use the Times Digital Archive to demonstrate the newspapers. And once you learn how to use the Times, you probably can do all of these other archives, use all of these other archives because the functionalities are pretty much similar. And then from the other types of archives, which typically contain multiple types of material under a certain theme, I have selected China and the Modern World. This is one of our most popular archives. It's actually a combination of different manuscript collections and also some periodicals as well. And I will demonstrate this to show you how to navigate one of these more complex archives that you see on the bottom side. And then after that, I will demonstrate the cross search where you can actually cross search almost everything that you see here on this slide. I say almost because there are 3 exceptions, which I'll touch upon when I get there. Okay, so first of all, the Times Digital Archive. So a brief 1-slide introduction to the Times Digital Archive. So this is an archive of the Times newspaper. It's sometimes called the London Times to distinguish it from other newspapers that have the name Times. So for instance, the New York Times, I think there's a Los Angeles Times. I'm not sure if there's a Singapore Times, but there are many, many newspapers in the world that have the name Times, but the Times is the original one. And sometimes we call it the London Times, just to clarify. And it was first established in 1785. So it goes back all the way to the late 18th century. And our archive contains all of its issues from the very beginning all the way up to 2019. So it has an end, although the newspaper itself is still publishing. This is a historical archive, so it ends at 2019. But still, that's more than 235 years of content. And all of the pages, all of the articles, including things like photographs, advertisements, kind of comics and crossword puzzles, everything on the page is digitized and searchable. And it's a unique record of all of the world's events, many people's opinions about cultural issues, about the English language itself. It's multidisciplinary. It can be used by students of history, of students of literature, politics, linguistics, philosophy, culture, theater, you name it. Basically, you can find something in here. There's also a little fine print here. The publication itself was suspended from December 1978 to 12th November the following year, 1979. So like 11th months, the publication itself was closed down because of a labor dispute. So there was no Times for 11 months. And that's a little detail that you should remember. The other detail I forgot to write in here is that this is a daily newspaper, and daily newspapers in Britain publish from Monday to Saturday, then take a rest on Sunday. Okay, so the Times is a newspaper that's only published from Monday to Saturday. Okay, that's all you need to know about the Times in order to basically start using it. Okay, so I will show you how to access the Times Digital Archive from the NTU Library site. So first of all, you go to the NTU Library site. You can do this, or you can just watch me do it, whichever is fine with you. And then there are several ways to get to the Times. I found the easiest way seems to be you click on the menu that says databases beneath this search box. then a separate window would pop up with an A to Z list. You select T and you scroll down, and around the middle of the page, you'll find the Times Digital Archive, the link to it. Okay, so I will now share my browser screen and show you how it's done. Okay, so this is the NTU Library website. I'm sure you know how to get here. And if you scroll down just a little bit, you see this one search box. And under the search box, you find this menu that says databases. I click on it, and a separate window appears, which has an A to Z list. You can actually search for the database name here. That's another way to do it, but I just prefer to click on T. And there are many databases named T. You kind of scroll down to around the middle of the page here, and you should find the Times Digital Archive right here. And once you click on that, you'll be asked to log in with your NTU ID and password. I don't have an NTU ID and password because I'm not an NTU student, but actually because I belong to the publisher, I have backdoor access to the database, okay? So once you do all of that, you should be able to arrive at the same page. So I'm gonna refresh the screen just in case I've been locked out, because that sometimes happens. Okay, I'm still in. So it's a very simple database. You see a search box, you see an advanced search menu here, you see some menus here, you see an explanation about the resource, and you see some, some interesting looking search tools down here as well. So the first thing maybe you want to do if you're not familiar with a resource, this is common to any of these resources, is to go to the About page. And the About page is actually contained within an area that we call the Learning Center. So this is like a help file on steroids. And it gives you very helpful information about this archive. And my favorite part is this part that says sample topics and searches. Sometimes we come to a database and we're not sure what we want to search. You know, this is your first time, you're not sure what to do. We give you some interesting examples that you might try out with, even with these hyperlink searches that will just run when you click on them. So you can try these if you're not sure what you want to search on. There are also some other sections about searching, giving you help with searching and reading and using the material, etc. This is a really, really helpful place, but I'm doing the presentation today, so you can just stick to me. I'm going to click on the banner and return to this page. So that was the About page, which is also part of the Learning Center page. Now I am going to do a search. And since you are all in Singapore, I assume, I'm going to do a search on Singapore. When you start typing, you will see all these candidates. I'm just going to ignore that and search on Singapore. And I get 179,498 results. Okay, so each of these results are individual articles within the newspaper page. So you can look at each of these thumbnails. You would notice that it looks like a newspaper page, and one area is highlighted in blue. It depends on which article it is, the area is different. So this blue part corresponds to this specific article, East Indies. This is from the September 12, 1820 issue of the Times. And you can click on the keyword preview to see the part where your keyword appears within the article. So you can kind of preview it. So you can see Singapore is highlighted. This is the OCR technology that I mentioned earlier. Okay. And whenever you search a newspaper database like this, by default, the results are shown in chronological order. So you see the oldest articles first. You can see it here. If you want to change this order, you can also change it to newest or relevance to show the most relevant articles first, and you can change that as well. But I'm kind of curious what the earliest article on that mentions Singapore in the Times looks like. So I'm going to open this article. Okay. And it's an article entitled East Indies. It's from September 7th, 1819. And I'm sure you know Singapore's history much better than I do, but my understanding is 1819 was the year when Sir Stamford Raffles came to Singapore and agreed with a local sultan, or was it the sultan or was it someone else? Anyway, agreed to acquire Singapore as a British territory. So it's already reported in the news here. And right now you see this article in its cutout format from the entire page. I can expand this to width or expand this further. And you can look at the text. So on the 4th of February, 1819, a treaty was concluded by the Honorable Sir Stamford Raffles, blah, 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 with the Sultan of Johor and the Tomongong of Singapore, and blah, 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 blah. So this is kind of the breaking news of the British acquiring Singapore. If you want to look at the text that is behind this article, you can click on plain text and it will show you the actual text. However, if you look carefully, you would notice that there are some strange characters and mistakes. This is because this is OCR technology. This is a computer program that is reading an image, and sometimes it makes mistakes. So you need to know about that, but nonetheless, it can be helpful sometimes. I can close this. And right now I'm looking at a single article within a bigger page. If I want to see the entire page that I'm looking at, you can toggle this menu that says article and page and change it to page. And this way you can see the entire page. This is actually the second page of a 4-page newspaper issue. Newspapers were much smaller during this time, especially until the early 19th century. It begins to expand from the 1820s onwards, but this is 1819, and the Times newspaper still only had 4 pages. And when you expand to the page view, you would notice that there are other articles on the same page that are hyperlinked as well. So you can see private accounts from Paris, accounts from Lancaster. There is the Royal Highness, the Duke of York arrived at the castle. Chester Assizes, I think these are legal court reports. Assize is a kind of a court. And you can jump to any of these articles if you want to. Or you would notice that this document now has 4 pages and you're looking at page 2. You can navigate to the first page. And this is what the first page of the September 7th, 1819 issue of the Times looked like. It's kind of interesting. When you look at the first page of a newspaper today, it will be full of all these headlines in big fonts, and it will be announcing whatever that's happening in the Middle East or whatever that's happening in Ukraine or Singapore. And it will have lots of photographs and things like that. But if you look at the first page of the Times newspaper during this period, it's kind of different. You would notice that these are all advertisements. These are kind of like classified ads, wanted, 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 mortgage wanted. This was actually the way newspapers looked like until like the early 20th century. For throughout the 19th century, most of the British newspapers, the first page was for advertisements. This is because advertisers were really important for their financing. So they emphasized the advertisements. In fact, the Times was one of the last ones to change the front page into that modern format where you see the news right away. They changed that in the 1960s, if I remember correctly. So this is another kind of historical thing that you can look at. I'm going to switch back to the article view. And before I go and do other searches, I wanted to show you the other tools that you find here. You can find here too on this page. So up here, you see this ribbon, which has some menus. So if you're citing this article, for example, in a paper you're writing, you can generate a citation by clicking on Cite. Or if you use any of those citation management tools like RefWorks, you can export the citation into your RefWorks or other tools by clicking on one of these buttons. Okay. You can also send this entire page to your Google Drive or Microsoft OneDrive. And this is another very useful feature. So I can click on send to and select the Google Drive option. It's the same either way. It's just a matter of choice. And you can choose whether to send the PDF or that OCR text that I just showed to you. I'm going to send the PDF, and I just click on send. And basically, it will tell me, okay, the articles have been sent to your Google Drive. When you do this for the very first time, it will ask you a series of questions about terms and permissions and things like that. So the very first time, it's a little bit more trickier, but the second time onwards, it's very, very smooth and seamless. I'm going to embarrass myself by sharing with you my Google Drive. I'm going to refresh this page. And here you just see this new document that says East Indies. It's a PDF file. And the entire page of this newspaper has been sent to me in PDF format, even with the citation information included in the last page. So this is another very helpful feature you can use with our primary sources. Other things, download, print, these are pretty similar to send to, except you download locally, you can print with your printer locally. And get link generates a stable URL to any article or page that you are viewing. Okay, there are other menus, but they're pretty self-explanatory, so I'll just return to the results again. Let me return, please. Maybe I talked too long. Okay, I'm still locked in. So right now we're looking at the oldest articles first, and that was kind of very historical. So I'm going to change the sort order to relevance, where you see the articles that are most relevant to my keyword first. And now you start to see more modern articles. And this is still a lot, like 79,000 articles is too much for me. So maybe I want to kind of narrow down my results a little bit. And when you want to narrow down your results, we have filters. And these little boxes that you see here on the right-hand side, these are all filters. When you click on them, they will expand and show you what filters are available to this particular search result. And I am going to limit my result to articles only. So you can see the various document types. They have things like advertisements, like these might be the Singapore airline advertisements, or stock table, naturally, this is Singapore, weather reports, sports news, death notices. I'm not interested in this kind of material. I'm only interested in this, really the news articles. I can click on articles, and that will instantly limit my search results to 79,000, but that's still a lot. Maybe I'm only interested in modern Singapore, so I'll limit the articles by date. I'm going to limit it to articles after 1964, so post-independence Singapore only. Of course, I can specify a month and a date, but I'm just too lazy. I just only did it on year. And now I have 23,000, which is still a lot. And what you can also do when you have lots of results and you're kind of too lazy to look at each of them, we have this cool tool called the Topic Finder. And when you click on the Topic Finder, what this tool does is it will analyze the top 100 results. It won't analyze everything. It will analyze the top 100 results of your search results and automatically generate this kind of heat map that shows the various keywords that seem to be appearing in your top 100 results. And this is very interactive. So I see something on Hong Kong. And there are, in fact, two articles that are related to Singapore and Hong Kong. There are articles on some kind of crisis. This is Taipei, trade, land. And this is a great, also kind of a great brainstorming tool. You just did a search on Singapore because you couldn't think of anything better. And now you're seeing all these little topics and you're getting new ideas. Hey, maybe I'm more interested in drugs, for instance. I can click on that drugs part and I see these very interesting contrasting articles. Singapore jails pair who use drugs abroad, and Singapore uses sin to win back tourists. It seems contradictory, but that's kind of the fascinating thing about Singapore, I guess. So you are very, very strict on drug use. You can even get the death penalty, I understand. And on the other hand, it's also an attraction. So Singapore uses sin to win back tourists. I'm not sure if the article is saying that they are using drugs to attract tourists, which would be illegal, but I think drugs is mentioned somewhere within this article as well. So this is a kind of an interesting way to look at articles. And this is a more modern article. This is from 2003. So you see the more familiar modern newspaper format. Okay, I'm going back to the top page. And just now at the beginning, I told you that there are two kind of interesting looking tools. I already demonstrated the topic finder. I'm going to demonstrate the other one, which is called term frequency. And this is one of my favorites. So this tool is really, really fascinating. It's especially great with newspaper archives like this. And it's easier to kind of demo than explain in words. So I'm just going to type Singapore. Ari remembers my previous attempt and hit search. And what this does is it generates a line graph of the number of results of my keywords Singapore in each of the years contained in this archive. Okay, so it goes up and down and up and down. You would notice that there's a really deep valley here, or deep drop here in 1979. If you remember that fine print that I referred to you when I was doing the PowerPoint, the whole Times newspaper was closed for 11 months, mostly during 1979. So any keyword you would find this dip in 1979, okay? And it's kind of more interesting when you add an additional but related keyword. So I'm going to enter Hong Kong because Hong Kong and Singapore are both kind of island territories, I'd say, and you were both formerly British colonies. So you kind of have it's easy, it's kind of interesting to compare. So the blue dots, the blue graph is for Singapore and the red graph is for Hong Kong. And you would notice that Singapore is almost always appears more commonly in the Times than Hong Kong, except in certain places. So there was one spike here in 1900. I think there was some disturbance here. And especially in the 1950s, Singapore is much more common than Hong Kong. But then in the 1980s to 90s, Hong Kong really, really goes up. And you can probably guess the reason. The 1950s was the period when there were lots of discussions between Singapore and the UK about self-government, independence, and hence probably there are lots of articles here. And again, in the 1980s to 1990s, then there was lots of discussion about the imminent handover of Hong Kong, which finally happened in 1997. So that's probably the reason of that spike. And on any of these dots, you can just click on these dots to jump to the relevant search results. So I just clicked on that peak there, the little peak there that says 1956. So I instantly get a search result of the keyword Singapore, but limited to 1956. I can sort this by relevance. And again, I can run the topic finder to see the kind of the big picture, what is appearing here. And I see things like chief minister. I think that was David Marshall during this time. And London appears, fears, crisis, dangers. So you can kind of guess what is being discussed. I think David Marshall went to London during this year and he tried to negotiate independence or self-government terms with the British government, but he failed miserably in many ways. So you can see probably that's the reason why there's a kind of a peak here in 1956. I'm just guessing here. Okay, but this is another fascinating tool. And the last thing you can do is advanced search. I'm going back to the home page again. Beneath the search box, you can go to advanced search. And this is where you can combine various terms. There are some little tips here that you can look at, like quotation marks for specific phrases. Okay, so I'm going to use quotation marks and search Lee Kuan Yew. And maybe I'm interested in an obituary. And I want articles that include a photograph. And I can run this search. And I get actually 22 results. This is not because Lee Kuan Yew died 22 times. This is because he's probably mentioned in other obituaries like Tunku Abdul Rahman, which makes sense. I can sort this by relevance. And of course, this is the article. This is in 2015 of Lee Kuan Yew's obituary. Okay, so basically, that's how you navigate the Times Digital Archive. Okay, I spent a little bit more time than other archives that I'm going to demonstrate later because most of the basic functions are actually the same. So I won't touch upon those same functions again when I demonstrate the other databases. Okay. So back to my PowerPoint. That was the Times Digital Archive. And the second database that I want to demonstrate to you today is called China and the Modern World. So the Times Digital Archive is a great place to start. If you're not sure which database to use first, I would definitely recommend the Times. It's easier to understand. We all know newspapers. We've all seen newspapers, and they are written for a general audience. It's easy to understand the content as well. It's more entertaining. However, if you want to dig deeper and want to get into more difficult, advanced material, this is another great place to start. And this is about the modern history of China. So that's roughly from the mid-19th century to the early 20th century. It depends on the segment that you're looking at. The time frame is different. But this is a collection of many different things. And most of these are manuscript documents. So they can be government documents, which are like internal records of the British government, or they can be letters, they can be internal working documents. In short, these are more kind of difficult documents to understand. They're not like newspapers, which are written by writers for a general audience and published widely and read by many people. These might be letters that were written by a specific person in history to another person in history without being intended to be read by people like you. So it's more like a private correspondence. So it can be a bit more difficult to understand the material. And you need to have a little bit more historical knowledge, not the context of the time. But nonetheless, they can be fascinating. And China and the Modern World series actually has 8 modules today, and of which 6 are already available to NTU. And I show you the 6 here. And some of them have that sign that says with HTR. So these 3 modules have that handwritten text recognition technology applied. So you can search the cursive handwriting in these modules. And these are modules are kind of thematic. The first module is a collection of periodicals, mainly published within China. These are all English language periodicals. This second one is from the Maritime Customs Service of China, which was a kind of a Chinese bureaucracy that ran the customs service in China, but it was run entirely by Europeans, which is a kind of an interesting thing. And these are their internal working records. And diplomacy and political secrets, these are mainly political documents about the area of boundary between China and British India. So these are there are a lot of materials about Tibet or Yunnan and those places. And these are, again, political diplomatic papers. This one is about Hong Kong. These are colonial office papers of the early colonial period of Hong Kong from 1841 to 1951. And these 2 modules, these are separated in 2, but these are actually from the same original collection, which is called FO17, which is the top level diplomatic record in Britain for all affairs with China up to 1905. So these are really, really top level diplomatic correspondence and things like that from all the way from 1815 to 1905, except they're just separated in two parts. And just for your information, we also have other modules. We have a Hong Kong Part 2 and one on Shanghai. These were just recently released, so they're not available to NTU yet, but that was a bit of an advertisement. Okay, how to access China in the modern world. Basically, it's the same thing. You go to databases, and it's a little bit tricky here. Instead of going to C, you want to go to G because it's titled Gale China in the Modern World in the NTU website. So I'm going to my browser again. And oops. I'll skip the first part and just go straight to the A to Z list. And I go to G, and here we are, Gale China and the Modern World. In fact, they also have links to each of the 6 modules. This one has already expired, I'm afraid. That you can go straight to these individual modules if you want to. And again, I'm not going to log in here. I'm just going to bypass this and go straight to the product from my publisher access. Oops. All right, I hope I'm still logged in. Okay, so this is a bit more complex, okay? Instead of just the search box and about this database text, you see here below the 6 different modules that I explained earlier. And beneath that, you will see about this resource. And again, you will see the topic finder and term frequency. So in this case, each of these modules kind of cover different types of material. So you can click on each of these. For instance, I can click on diplomacy and political secrets. And a lot of these modules are named with these catchy names, but sometimes you need to read the description to find out what this is really about. And actually, we can see that these are the British India office records and the Burma office records. And we have selected the material that is related to China within those records. So you can find a lot of material from Xinjiang, Tibet, Yunnan, basically the Western or southwestern part of China, those border areas. And you can read this entire description. And if this module contains multiple parts, multiple collections, each of these collections will be hyperlinked, okay? You can also go to the Learning Center again and find out more about this particular archive, except when in the case of multiple module archives like these, you can go to any part and you have this drop-down menu. So depending on the module that you want to look into, you will have, they will show you different examples of searches and different examples of documents. So you just need to change the module here. Okay, I go back to the top page. The other different thing is you will see this collections menu. So this particular archive consists of 6 different modules, which in turn contain 16 different collections sourced from many different libraries. So you can filter these collections again. If you're interested in the collections from the National Archives of the UK, you can see those only. And by clicking on any of these collections, for instance, I'm clicking on FO17, I can find more about FO17, which is, again, the top level diplomatic correspondence with China up to 1905 from Britain. And if you're really a historian type of person and FO17, all of that is second nature to you, you can just scroll down and see, oh, I'm interested in FO17/13. That was the document I was looking for. You can just click on this and open this document, okay? And you notice that it's a little bit different. It's similar, but a little bit different from the newspaper one. This one has lots of pages. So this is a 124-page or image document. And it doesn't have a table of contents, but you can search within each document. and you have the citation, and all of the other tools that I showed to you are the same as well. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the top page, and again, I'm going to do a search on Singapore. Okay. And the search results are pretty similar to what I showed to you earlier, except instead of one search result, you see two different types of search results. So you see manuscripts and you see newspapers and periodicals. And if you scroll down, you would see that there are two zones here as well. You see the manuscript zone, and we show you the top 3 results for manuscripts. And if you scroll down further, you see the newspaper zone, and you see the top 3 results for newspapers. So for these more complex archives, which contain different types of material, sometimes we segregate the types of material into different search results. So if I click on the newspapers and periodicals, this will be pretty similar to the London Times that I showed to you earlier. Okay. One difference is this is not a search result of just a single title, which was the London Times. This is searching 17 different periodical titles. So we have a publication title filter here. And I can apply the publication title filter. Maybe I'm interested in West China Missionary News. Apply it and narrow it down. And I see an article that says, "Welcome to Singapore." How nice. I might open that, and it turns out to be a kind of a humorous or satirical poem. Singapore is ruled by the British, who show a benevolent hand. They cleaned out a nest of old pirates and made it a wonderful land. Their only season is summer, and a snowstorm never occurs. The thermometer is high and the latitude's low, so they need neither furnace nor furs. So this is a kind of doggerel. Okay, kind of interesting. Go back to the search results, and I'm going to remove this filter. And instead, I want to go to the manuscripts tab to show you something different. And I have 2,132 manuscript documents. You can think of each of these results as whole thick volumes or folders containing many different pages of documents. And we have more than 2,000 of them, which is a lot. So again, maybe I want to filter this down. I'm going to filter this to collection FO17. Oops, apply that. And maybe I'll add an additional keyword, search within. And I also want the document to contain the word Singaporean. Okay, submit. That kind of limits the results to 11 manuscript volumes, which is a bit more manageable. Again, I can click on the keyword preview, same as the times. And this time you would notice that it's searching handwritten text. Okay, so this is kind of cool. These are handwritten documents, and they can come in different handwritings. So this handwriting is very different from this handwriting, yet it's still Singapore. It also contains printed documents as well. So this is the cool part of some of these archives, especially China in the modern world, some of the modules. I'm going to click on this one. And basically it's the same as the newspaper result that I showed to you earlier, but there are some important differences. Okay, when you open a manuscript or a monograph document like this, you will always be shown the first page of a multi-page document. So this document contains 570 pages, and you're seeing page 1. Page 1 doesn't necessarily contain the word Singapore. And if you want to go to the pages that contain the word Singapore, you look for this area, which says search term hits. And each of these numbers are image numbers. So you can expand this. In fact, there are a lot here. And you can click on 28, and it will automatically jump to image number 28. If I expand this, it contains the word Singapore. And this is a kind of an interesting document. On the morning of 29th October, I received a telegram from the Majesty's Consul. This is actually a pretty easy document to read, informing me that the Tao Tai had arrested and beaten a Singapore Chinese, undoubtedly a British subject. So this is actually a kind of a typical problem they had during this time. Singapore was considered a British colony. So people born there, whether they were ethnically Chinese or British, they were considered to be British subjects, and they were protected under the British authority. However, a lot of these Chinese Singaporeans often went to China, whether to visit their relatives or to do all kinds of business. And sometimes they would get caught because they might be doing something sneaky. And whenever they get caught, they would suddenly say, hey, actually, I'm a British subject. I need to be protected by the British crown. And this was a headache for the Singapore establishment. And a lot of these results are very interesting. I found another particular interesting one here. This is in typewriting. This is another guy, Kun Yong, returning to Singapore for a time. His wife and family continuously resided in Chinese soil. And when he was kind of got into trouble in Amoy, and he was thought of as a Chinese subject, actually he escaped to Singapore and suddenly obtained from the Straits government a passport of a natural-born British subject. And when he returned back to Amoy, he claimed that, oh, hey, I'm a British subject, so you can't arrest me. This kind of thing really happened a lot. It's fascinating because these people were, in many senses, neither Chinese, neither British. They were actually kind of parts of both of those worlds, okay? So anyway, I found this particularly fascinating. And when you're looking at a document, if it contains illustrations, you will see this menu, illustrated works, and this one contains lots of tables. In fact, you see a certificate of nationality of one Un Bian Shane, for example, and things like that. So you can jump to these illustrated parts. The other menus are basically the same, cite, send to, download, print. So basically you should be able to navigate this, okay? The other menu that you didn't see in the Times Digital Archive is the part that says publications. And basically this just lists periodicals. Publications in our universe basically means periodicals. And this archive contains 17 different periodicals. And you can click on any of these periodicals and navigate to a particular year and a particular date issue and browse it from there, okay? That's the only difference. So basically that's how to use China in the modern world. Clear? Okay. I see some things on the chat. Okay. Okay, please elaborate on the copyrights when Gale digitized old newspapers and documents which probably are supposed to be in the public domain. That's a great question, and that's a delicate one, actually. Often the image rights actually reside with the original institutions that hold these documents. So it depends on the institution, original institution's policies. So for instance, the document that I just showed to you earlier from the FO17, that belongs to the National Archives of the UK. So the National Archives of the UK probably they would consider to be in public domain. However, Gale has the rights for this database as a compilation. So it can be a bit complicated sometimes. If you want to use a document in a publication, it is best to check with the original holding institution, especially if you're using an image, okay? And please briefly explain how topics are being complied. Example, are there tagging done in the backend for articles in Topic Finder? Oh, that's a great question. The topics, I think it's a mixture of the subjects and keywords that are appearing in the titles, but I'm not exactly sure how those keywords appear in that rainbow structure. I will ask our product managers in the US and get back to you on that. Let me make a note on that. Topic Finder terms. Okay, great question. Any particular tips for the 40 Gale database for someone researching Indian convicts transported from British India to the Straits settlements in the 19th century? I would say China in the modern world would be a great place to start. Or you can use the cross search, which I'm just about to demonstrate. Okay. Great questions. Thank you. Sorry, I was supposed to wait for the end for questions, but I couldn't resist. Okay, back to my slideshow. So how to access China in the modern world, I already explained. And now, as I mentioned, I cannot possibly walk you through all of these 40 different collections in this manner. It will take all day. You'll all be gone and I'll be talking to myself. So instead, I will be demonstrating to you the cross-search platform, which enables you to cross-search almost everything on this sheet. And there are actually 3 exceptions, which I kind of clustered at the end. The 3 databases here, State Papers Online. This is a collection of early British state papers from the Elizabethan area or the early 18th century era. These are all manuscript documents. This is a kind of a complex database. It's not yet cross-searchable with the others. Chatham House is a think tank in the UK. And these documents also live in a very different universe from the others. So we weren't able to make this cross-searchable, at least not for the moment. British Literary Manuscripts is a collection of that literary manuscripts, so manuscripts of writers and things like that. This too is not cross-searchable. Everything else that you see here on the screen, so all the remaining 37 archives can be cross-searched from a single interface. Okay, so before I go into the cross-search, let me kind of briefly show you one-liners about each of these for you. I won't take too much time. I have like 6 slides, but I'll go through them very, very quickly, and I won't read them all, okay? I promise. But just wanted to give you a really, really brief overview of these 40 collections. So starting with newspapers and periodicals, this is the first, this is the first of 3 slides for that. And I already explained the times, which needs no additional explanation. We also have the Sunday Times, which published only on Sundays. This was more about investigative reporting and culture. Then we have 2 business-related titles, the Financial Times and the Economist. I'm sure many of you are familiar with those titles. They're still publishing. International Herald Tribune is no longer publishing, but it used to be a very popular title, and it's particularly strong in international news, including Asia. The TLS and TES, these are literary reviews and educational papers, respectively. And the next newspaper slide, we have a whole lot of other British periodicals. We have lots. Some of them are more popular, kind of tabloid titles like the Daily Mail. Other are more respectable, like the Independent. And these 3 in particular contain a lot of pictures. The Illustrated London News, Punch is a satirical magazine. Picture Post contains lots of photographs. So these are really good for visual results. Listener is a kind of a literary weekly published by the BBC. Liberty Magazine was a general interest American magazine. And then we have collections of periodicals. We have a whole collection of 19th century British periodicals, collection of British Library newspapers, newspapers held by the British Library, 2 collections of early 17th and 18th century newspapers, a collection of American periodicals, historical ones, and a collection of 19th century British, American newspapers, and a weird collection called amateur newspapers, mainly from the 19th century. And then from the books, documents, and other materials category, we have China and the Modern World, which I just explained. We also have State Papers Online Colonial Asia. This one is cross-searchable with the others. And this contains British Colonial Office papers on Hong Kong, Weihai, and Asia in general. In fact, we just released a second module to this, which covers Singapore and Malaysia, East Malaysia, which is coming soon, I hope. And then we have 19th century collections online, which is a gigantic archive, which in turn contains 12 thematic modules, all from the long 19th century. And one of the modules is specifically about Asia. So this one might be interesting to many of you. We have declassified documents. These are government documents that were formerly secret or classified. They are no longer classified and open to the public. We have a collection of American ones and a collection of British ones, okay? And then we have 18th century books. books on economic and social history, books on America, pamphlets from decolonized former British colonies, collection about gender, archives of sexuality and gender, crime, punishment, and popular culture. And Archives Unbound is a place where we put small size collections that don't fit anywhere else. So these are many different subjects. In fact, we have more than 400 of them, and many of them are actually Asia related as well. And is this the last slide? Yeah. Okay, finally, we have collections from the Smithsonian that are related to world fairs, industry, aviation, and 2 Smithsonian magazines, collection of early American fiction, collections of Associated Press archives, and the final 3 I already explained. These are the ones that are not cross-searchable: Chatham House State Papers Online and British Literary Manuscripts Online. Okay, so now that you have a perfect understanding of all these 40 collections, of course I'm joking, we can now proceed to demonstrate a cross search. And there are 2 ways to do this. You can actually start from a specific database, like the Times Digital Archive of China and the Modern World, or any of those cross-searchable databases. You can do a search and then click on a button to expand your search to the entire cross-searchable Gale primary sources, all of those 37 collections. There's a button that does that. Or if you just want to start from the cross search, in the same way, you can just go to the database list, click on G, and you will find this menu that says Gale primary sources. This will take you straight to the cross search menu. Okay, so I shall demonstrate this again. Let me go back to my browser and let me return to the Times Digital Archive. I hope I'm still in it. Okay. All right, I'm going to do a search on Singapore again. And maybe I'll limit the date to 1956 because that was the one that appeared in that term frequency. Okay, and apply. Okay, I get 1,400 results, which is a lot. I can click on relevance to sort them by relevance. But maybe while I'm looking at these articles from the London Times, I might be thinking, hey, there should have been other newspapers that were published during this time. How are they reporting this whole Singapore issue? How are other newspapers reporting this? Or what about other government documents? And a great way to do that is you don't have to actually run a new search. We're still in the Times Digital Archive. But if you scroll down a little, you see these 2 icons. Digital Scholar Lab, this is not the topic of today's session, but I might introduce it to you briefly later. But this is the part where you can broaden your search. I just click on this. And what this does is it will run that exact same search, keyword Singapore, date limited to 1956, except now it's searching the entire Gale primary sources collections, all the cross-searchable ones that are available to NTU. And you see a lot more articles here. So not only are you looking at the Times, you can look at the publication title. You can see results from the Financial Times, the Daily Telegraph, the Economist, et cetera, et cetera. And you can click on any of these publications. For example, The Punch. That's a satirical magazine. So I'm wondering what's happening here. And of course, because it's a satirical magazine, it contains kind of quirky cartoons. So this one is titled Birth of Nation. This is 1956. And I think, hold on, wait till it loads. All right, let's expand this. This was kind of interesting. I think this is David Marshall here. And it says, God, Confucius, Marx, and Allah, bless our native Singapore. May its trade and population keep increasing evermore, from the Singapore national anthem. Of course, that's fake, but you can kind of get the point. David Marshall is here. He was very, very passionate about the Singaporean independence and self-government, but the British didn't really like him a lot, I guess. And you can see this strange flag where you see, I think this is the Singapore dragon, and the British flag is really, really tiny. and you see a rubber tire in a tin can, which probably kind of is about the industry there. And you see, and almost fade away, you see this Soviet icon. And there was a really big concern about the supposedly communist population in Singapore, I think, during this time. So I think this flag is summing up the concerns that the British had about this whole negotiation. So you can see this in the punch. So unexpected results you can find by expanding to cross search. Okay. Go back to the results. That was just another periodical. I'm going to remove this punch filter. And I can also go to the manuscripts. See something interesting here. This is from a collection of 20th century British declassified documents. It says top secret. It's kind of interesting. And this is again from the National Archives. This is from the Colonial Office, but these are security related documents. And again, you can see a lot of references to what was happening in Singapore, except these are kind of more secret documents. I think there was something interesting here. Oops. Yeah, for example, this one says Singapore Constitutional Discussions, Note on Security Intelligence, and lists down all of the threats and worries that the British had, almost paranoid worries of what was happening in Singapore during this time. This was, at the time, a secret document, but you can see this within Gale primary sources. I'll go back to the search results. Again. And you would notice that there are more types of documents. They're actually pretty similar to the manuscripts tab. We also have a monographs tab, which shows basically books, but also some American government documents are also included here as well. I think outline plan of operations for US policy. This is from the US Declassified Documents Archive. And again, this shows the American point of view about what was happening in Singapore, between Singapore and Britain, and the American policy about those things. This is from the White House, so you can see those as well, and other different types of documents. Okay, I go back to the search results. If you go back to all content types, again, just like the China and the modern world search results, each of these categories are shown in these little boxes, and the top 3 documents are shown for each. And you would notice that these numbers in brackets are the numbers of results for each category, that newspapers and periodicals seem to contain a lot of results. And this is almost always the case with any keyword that you search. And this is one of the reasons why we separate these document types, because newspapers and periodicals tend to cover a lot of topics. They are usually larger in number. And the other reason is, as you may remember from my Times demonstration, with newspapers, we actually separate all of those individual articles in the newspaper page into individual results. So that also kind of inflates the number for newspapers and periodicals. So don't be fooled by these numbers. Don't always think that just because newspapers and periodicals has the biggest number, it must be the most relevant. That's not always the case. I would always advise you to look at all these different categories to see if there's something interesting. And of course, we have these filters, which kind of change as you click on each type of document. Everything else is pretty much the same. If you go to the top page, this is where you arrive at. When you directly come to the primary sources, you can search all of these databases, and you also have links to each of the individual databases. Some people might think, well, if you can cross-search everything in one go, why bother to visit these individual interfaces? What's the point if you can search everything? It really depends on your purpose. If you really want to cast a wide net and see what comes out, I would recommend that you just start with the Gale primary sources cross search. But also these individual databases, they also give you a lot of contextual information about each of these collections, which are not given in the cross search. The cross search only gives you the search results in the documents, whereas these individual interfaces contain a lot of information, contextual information about each collection that's contained inside. You have all these texts that explain everything. You can browse things more easier in these individual interfaces. And sometimes the individual interfaces have little functions that are only available to that particular product only. So it's worth actually going to these individual modules as well. It depends on your purpose and your topic that you're looking into. Okay, now wrapping up, I shall return back to my slideshow again. So that was basically the cross search. A few things to note about the cross search. I already mentioned this during the presentation. The cross search returns multiple content types, including things like monographs, manuscripts, newspapers, and periodicals. And each of those tabs are worth looking at individually. And don't be fooled by the big number under newspapers and periodicals. It always gets more hits because they cover a broad range of topics, and the results are each segregated into the article level. And some products, in NTU's case, 3 products are not available for cross-search: Chatham House, State Papers, and British literary manuscripts. So if you're interested in those topics, I'm sorry, you need to go to the library database list and access them individually. We hope to bring these into the cross-search in the near future, though. Okay, I still have a bit of time, so before I enter Q&A, I just wanted to show you something a little bit different. This is the Gale Digital Scholar Lab. I'm not going to demonstrate this, but just going to show you the basic concept, just as an FYI, okay? So when I explained the digitization process in the beginning, I mentioned that we apply these OCR and HTR technologies to these images containing text. So this is an example of a newspaper article about the Indonesian President Sukarno. It's a short article, and this is the page image, and you can see the highlighting. And I showed to you during the presentation, you can actually look at the OCR text that is actually hidden behind this page image. And I also mentioned that the OCR contains some errors. So you can see here, you see some funny characters here and there, but basically most of the text is pretty okay. And what some scholars are interested in doing is, instead of looking at these page images one by one, what they want to do is they want to directly play around with this OCR text data. And they're not looking at just one single article. They might want to contain one article with another article on Sukarno, another article, and maybe hundreds or even thousands of such text files. Combine them all together into what they call a bag of words. And these are all textual material, textual data, and apply certain analyses tools to do something like this. So this is a word cloud that I actually created using the Gale Digital Scholar Lab. I collected a bunch of news articles about President Sukarno, and I told this tool, return to me what are the most commonly appearing 2-word phrases in my entire corpus, and show it to me as a word cloud. So I see phrases like United States, President Sukarno, New Guinea, United Nations. But if you look carefully, you would notice that there are some other interesting things like Dutch troops and armed forces and other things. So you can just kind of look at this word cloud and kind of get new ideas about what is contained in this gigantic mass of text. This is the kind of thing that can be done with the Gale Digital Scholar Lab. And we decided to make that into a separate platform because the purposes for that kind of research is very different from the traditional workflow. So the traditional workflow is the workflow that I just demonstrated to you. You enter a keyword, you get a list of documents, and basically you're expected to look at each document individually on the screen in its original page image. So we call this the search and retrieve workflow. Whereas people who engage in the digital humanities do something different. They might want to collect all of this textual data. And instead of looking at them one by one, they want to look at it using this big data analysis technology and kind of identify patterns or keywords that are difficult to see when you're really burying your noses in these individual pages. So we call this the gather and analyze workflow. And Gale Primary Sources is optimized for the more traditional search and retrieve workflow. And we developed a different platform called the Gale Digital Scholar Lab, which is more for the gather and analyze workflow. In digital humanities terminology, this one is called close reading, and the Digital Scholar Lab can be termed distant reading, which is not reading in the traditional sense. You're looking at data and trying to identify patterns and things like that. So I won't demonstrate this, but you can actually access the Gale Digital Scholar Lab as well if you're interested in this kind of research. So it's the same way. You just select G from the database list and you get the Gale Digital Scholar Lab. It's a little bit different. It's a bit more complex, but there are plenty of actually help tools within the platform itself. And if there's another opportunity, I'll be delighted to demonstrate this to you. I actually did a demo to NTU in the past, so maybe they have the recording as well. So I just wanted to show that to you as an FYI. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention. And sorry, I went ahead and answered some of the questions already. Hope that was okay.
No
Yeah.
problem. Thank you, Masaki, for the very enlightening talk. Yes, we still have some time, everyone. It is now 1:17. There's around slightly over 10 minutes left. If you have any questions, please feel free to type it into the meeting chat now. Or if you wish to, you can unmute yourself. You can unmute yourself and then just speak up and ask your question over the using your mic. Let me check my chat. Let's see. Okay, there are no questions in the chat.
Can I just ask a question?
Sorry, go ahead.
Masaki, it's actually a follow-up with the copyright question.
Yes.
Just now you said that, okay, let's put aside images, right? Okay, let's just talk about manuscript, all right? So Gale took an image, right? Took a picture of, let's say, a manuscript. All right, and I want to use that image, say, for my publication. So my question is, that image that Gale took, all right, who owns the copyright?
Yes, so a page image, whether it's a picture or if it's an image of a text, it doesn't matter really. The image, original document image rights belongs to the source institution of each collection. So if that particular document you're looking at came from the British Library, the British Library will be the rights holder. Or if it came from another university library, you should check with the university library that owns the original document. If you're using the image, it doesn't matter if the image is a photograph or a picture or just a plain image of a handwritten document. If you want to use the image as an image in a publication, especially if it's a commercial publication, and commercial includes scholarly publications, it would be best to check with the source institution. Okay. If you're just transcribing the text from a manuscript and quoting it, generally that's free, fair use. It doesn't really, you don't need to get permission. And I would say a lot of those documents, those images would be in the public domain, but we can't really assure that because we are not the rights holders. So I would recommend that you check with the source institution just in case. Okay. That's a great question and one that we get all the time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from anyone else in this room?
Actually, I have one more, just one more.
Sure.
Regarding digital scholarship lab,
yes.
Earlier on, your demonstration was using the articles and texts found in the database, databases, right? So if we have text, all right, plain text, are we able to put it inside your, is Gale Digital Scholarship Lab able to take in those texts? Like
yes.
text I compile separately?
Yes, actually, we do have a function. So for the benefit of the audience, we're talking about the Digital Scholar Lab, which is not today's topic, but the last part, the FYI part. And that platform also has a function where you can, the end user can upload textual data into the platform for analyses. However, there is one point that I need to emphasize. The end user who does that should have cleared all text mining rights before they do so, because we cannot guarantee any copyright issues or cannot protect you from any infringement. So if a student, say, copies an article from the internet, which was actually copyrighted, and maybe copies many of them, and does an analysis by uploading them, as long as the student is just doing that for their own, curiosity, should be kind of gray zone, but okay. But if the student, say, publishes it widely, it might become a little infringement problem. So that's the most important point about uploading text.
Okay, so as a follow-up question,
Yep.
If we put the text inside, right? If any student, we put the text inside, what happened to those texts? I mean, if let's say, is it being leaked? I mean, is it being kept by Gale in any form? I mean, it goes into your system. I assume it is somewhere inside your system.
Yes, but we don't look at the text. We have no rights to look at the text. What we can look at is we can look at the names of those, I forgot the name of what it's called. Gosh, when you create a group of documents, you give it a name, right? And we can look at those names, but we can't string those names with any individual users. We just look at them anonymously. Okay, so a student in NTU created a content set. Yeah, that's the word, content set called, I don't know, like Singapore rubber industry or something. We can look at that, but we can't identify which student did that. We can't look at the content of the content of that content set itself. We can only look at it statistically. Only the user that owns that content set has the right to actually look at it.
No, but you will be able to look at the content set, right? You cannot identify the person, but you can look at the content set. Is that correct?
The name of the content set. We can't look inside. We can't look what it's composed of. We can't, okay? Well, we can only look at the title.
Okay, thank you.
That's the only information that we can get.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have a question actually from someone who chatted directly to me. The question is actually more for the library. Are we able to approach anyone in NTU Library if we need some assistance exploring the Gale databases? And yes, the answer is yes, you can email the library. Or you can, if you know any librarians, liaison librarians, you can talk to them, drop them an email directly. But the most reliable way is, of course, to just email library@ntu.edu.sg, and someone will be in touch email us with your question, and someone will be in touch to answer any questions you have. If there's something that we are not sure about on our end, we will also check in with Masaki and the subject experts if there are any such questions. So yes, if you have any queries, you're not sure how to use any of the databases, feel free to drop us a line. Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's one question. Let me check my chat again. Are there any other questions? I do not see any other questions in my chat. Does anyone want to speak up? Okay, well, it looks like we do not have any more questions. But if there are any of you who are too shy to ask with everyone here, not to worry. You can again, you can drop us an email after this, or you can drop me a direct message in this in the chat later as well if you don't want to ask it right now. But before we end off today's session, let me share my screen about to share with you some information about the quiz that Masaki shared about at the start of today's session. So let's wait for the screen to, yeah, I think you can all see my screen now. So as announced at the start of today's session, there is a quiz that is ongoing, an online quiz with some attractive prizes, including what you can see on the screen. And the information about this quiz and how to access it is all available online. We have just put up a post on our blog, as you can see. That's what I'm sharing right now. And there is a link at the end of the post to the quiz itself. So you can click on the link and then you can start taking part in the quiz using the techniques that Masaki just shared in the workshop a moment ago. Okay. What I will do now is I will paste this URL into our Zoom chat for everyone. Let me do that right now. Send to everyone. And you can click on this link that I have just shared with everyone in the chat to see the information and to then follow the link at the end of the post to take part in the quiz. The blog that I am sharing also has useful information and updates about various library events and other library resources that might be of interest to you. So feel free to explore. And yeah, we hope you will all take part in the quiz and share it with your friends and get everyone to participate. And the quiz isn't that difficult, so I'm sure all of you will be able to hopefully complete it and have a chance to win some of the prizes that are up for grabs. Okay, let me just do one more final check on the chat. Yes, there's no more questions here. And yeah, I think if there are no more questions, we have come to the end of today's session. And the time now is 1:28, just nice as well to end on time. Thank you everyone for your attention and for dropping by to this session today. Yeah, as I've mentioned a few times already, if you have any questions, feel free to drop us an email after this. And yeah, if that's all, I think, yes, we can declare this session today over. Thank you everyone for your time and attention. I hope you all have a great day, a great afternoon, and we'll see you soon in other NTU Library events.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day.
If there are anyone with questions, feel free to drop by to stay back if you want. If not, yeah, feel free to leave the Zoom meeting room. Okay, I will end the recording now.